Thank you, Kayvon, for coming today, and thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll have a great seminar.
Right. Well, thanks, Sherry. Well, as I said, I'm Kayvon, and I'm the founder and CEO of NestGSV. But just by a show of hands, how many of you are startups here? Okay, good. And how many of you are service providers of sort? Okay. How many represent a large corporation or anything like that? None. Good. And how many are investors? Okay, so it seems like the majority of the room is either a startup or a service provider and some investors. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about, first of all, I'll start with what we do at NestGSV, and then kind of share with you some of the different types of platforms that exist for startups and service providers and investors. And so that's what we'll do, and then we'll just basically, I'll have, answer whatever questions to the best of my knowledge. So NestGSV, we opened up our doors. We actually had our grand opening September 27th of 2012. So we're not quite 2 years old yet. And the word NestGSV, the GSV has really two meanings here. One is that my lead investment partner is GSV Capital. So I want to pay a little homage to them, but also it stands for the global Silicon Valley. So, we all know about Silicon Valley, but what's happening is Silicon Valley, we believe it's more than a place, it's actually a way how innovation and entrepreneurship thrives. So our vision, let's see if this goes. Yeah, let's try. There we go. I don't know which way I went, but maybe it is down. So our vision is to build a globally connected network of innovation centers. And let me repeat that, a globally connected network of innovation centers. We're not going to franchise our business. We're not going to license our business. But what we're going to do is bring the world to Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley to the world. That's because basically, right now the market is demanding that. Silicon Valley has always thought global, but yet everyone needs to come to Silicon Valley, or they feel that they need to come to Silicon Valley in order to be successful and have a global strategy. Our business model is a little counterintuitive, where we want to make the world less dependent on Silicon Valley. And so that's what we're trying to do. And to develop basically a global standard for innovation and entrepreneurship by developing a robust entrepreneurial program. And basically what we want to do is take the bias out of geography and focus on the best companies by sector. And so so before we're kind of getting into why we believe we are the right time at the right place, as I mentioned, you can tell that entrepreneurship today is a global phenomenon. And the reason why is a few key things have happened over the past 7 to 10 years. Something called cloud computing, something called open source, and actually the new portal to the internet, which is no longer a desktop, but it's everything, one thing that we all have in our pockets today, right? So what's happening is people have access to a tremendous amount of information and resources that did not exist literally 7 years ago. I remember when I was at Plug and Play, we did an event in 2000, I think it was around 2008. And the theme of the event was, is cloud computing here to stay? Now, we already knew it was, but it was actually a debate amongst thought leaders. Is this thing really going to happen, right? And then another thing that really transformed everything was a little company called Apple that decided to open up an app store, right? That created these millions of companies, many little companies that are happening. Now, something else that's happening today, which is kind of unique, is that global population is rising, large corporate employment is flat at best, right? And technology is replacing people. But yet, you need people to make technology. So, and the other thing that's happening is we actually believe that today we're in what we call the innovation era. So if you could think of the turn of the century as the second industrial revolution, and if you could think of the 40s as the atomic revolution, and if you think of the 80s as the information revolution, and the 2000s as the digital revolution, today we're in the innovation revolution. And what I mean by that is whether you're government, school, corporation, service provider, you need to have an innovation strategy to stay relevant to your citizens, your clients, and so forth. So there's this convergence of basically traditional industry and technology, which I think is going to provide tremendous opportunity. Now the other challenge is, if you look at universities today, you know, they're really not set up to train people to become entrepreneurs, right? When I went to school, entrepreneurship really didn't exist. I think maybe USC had a program and so forth. But really what I did was, you know, and I studied economics and management, so I was absolutely clueless. You know, I just said, okay, let me go to the Career Center and let me see what I want to do. So I went there and I kind of looked up, oh, here's some cool companies. And back then, I thought the two companies that I felt that I'd feel good about going to would be Xerox or IBM. I eventually chose Xerox because IBM scared me. You know, it was just too big and too much, as if Xerox wasn't that big. You know, back then I think IBM had close to 300,000 employees, but Xerox only had about 150,000. And so I actually decided to go there. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the one thing that has, you know, basically has had a lasting impression on me professionally was Xerox's commitment to send me to Leesburg, Virginia once or twice a year to train me and help make me a better professional. And what I'm seeing today is that startups don't have that luxury, right? So from a high level, NestGSV wants to be what Xerox was to me as a corporate entity, to give me all the resources and tools and the skill set necessary to become a successful entrepreneur. And so what we're trying to do today is really to bridge that gap and to become that bridge between university life and the professional life. And the other thing that's really important today, which is kind of making a big difference here, is that, you know, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, large corporations would not engage with a startup until that startup was minimum had a product, was generating revenue, and in most cases they wanted that entity to be profitable. And the reason why is they don't want to risk any products and services, you know, to a company that was risky. That has changed completely today. Today, large corporations are realizing, because of all these things I talked about, open source, cloud computing, and you know, all these things that are happening today, large corporations are afraid that the next big disruptive technology most likely is not going to come from their R&D centers, but it's going to be some little startup that's going to basically, with a small team, that is completely going to, you know, disrupt their market. So fear and is one reason why they're engaging earlier with startups. And the second thing is because there's so much innovation happening, it's more of kind of a scouting thing. So today large corporations are changing their strategy and they're basically engaging with startups at an earlier and earlier stage. And another reason why large corporations also play a significant role today is that IPOs, you know, the number of IPOs have gone down over 50% since, you know, let's say even 10 years ago. So the exit of a company, and that's what investors are always looking at, is most likely some sort of M&A transaction. And so what's happening is we kind of feel that we got to sit in the middle there, because we're also on the fundamental belief that large corporations, you know, we say are from Mars and startups are from Venus. They don't know how to communicate with each other. And quite frankly, even though as much as they need each other, you know, the way a large corporation is structured will squash and kill that whole entrepreneurial process, both from a timing perspective, from a political perspective, and so forth. So what we do is basically kind of sit in the middle there, and we kind of do all the negotiations ahead of time so we can have successful engagement between large corporations and startups. And I can go into detail a little later. Okay. So what we're talking about here is, you know, also one thing that I've learned, you know, over the years is today the challenges that society is facing in this innovation era is that when you talk about problems around education, healthcare, transportation, that we fundamentally believe that no single entity alone is going to be able to solve these problems. But it's going to be a collaborative process between different stakeholders in this innovation economy to focus on a common initiative and use technology to solve these problems. And so we call that model the Ecobator. Because actually what we're doing is we're actually incubating the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. And to give you an example, last week, we had the White House, we had the Department of Education, we had Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we had a number of universities, we had Kaplan, and a number of other organizations, 60 thought leaders coming into NestGSV to basically work together, and we've identified 6 areas that, around the education technology that we need to focus on to help solve problems around technology. I mean, to help solve around education. And that is really important. The fact that all these different entities agree and acknowledge the fact that they need each other in order to be successful. So that's kind of what we are, is we call ourselves the Ecobator, because not only are we a platform for startups, and today we have a little over 90 startups in our facility, but we also have government entities, we also have large corporations, we also have organizations all in our facility, because we feel that that mix is what's important in order for everyone to be successful. Now, what we also saw that there's a common point, some points of commonality between all these different entities where it makes sense to bring all these peoples together. And that's really where the fun begins. On our day-to-day operations, we support companies from a facility perspective. We support them, with their business development, their fundraising, their marketing, PR, and all that other stuff. But what kind of excites me and gets my juices flowing is when, we could get all these different entities together on a common initiative. So just kind of very quickly, we've kind of broken down our business into 8 platforms, generally speaking. Some of them are what we call our core platforms. And then some of them are basically what I call the secondary platforms. But it's really not that important. It's really because of our own resources. They're all core to us, but we had to prioritize things. So Nestwork is basically, I've been doing this thing for about 10 years now, as far as incubating and accelerating companies. And the biggest challenge we have in this business is, how much of it do you do virtual and how much do you do it in a physical component, right? Now you can see our business model being the Ecobator, I need large facilities to basically do this thing. And that's why we have a large facility. It's not because we're egomaniacs. It's just because, in order to kind of get all these different entities engaged, you need a facility of a certain size in order to make it all happen. But the question I always had is how much of it can we do, in a virtual way or using digital technology, and how much of it has to be in person? And we came to the conclusion that it's going to be a mix, right? And the reason is this. Just a fundamental reason is that we're human beings. And human beings need that personal connection, right? And if you think about, how you and I will communicate, I know Raman there back. Where is Raman? There you are. So Raman and I are friends, right? And once in a while we may communicate by email or by phone call, but really the most impactful engagement that we would have is when we see each other, right? And so that's why the physical component of this business is really important. Now, because of the complexity of the business, we also have to leverage technology and so forth. And for us, to make it a little more complicated, we have global ambitions, so we have to have that right balance of using physical infrastructure, people, and technology to achieve our vision of building this globally connected network of innovation centers. So Nest's work, make a long story short, is basically our physical operations, right? And that's where our government partners, our corporations, and our startups, we house them in our community. And that's where they come to work every day, right? And what's interesting, so that's just all the operational stuff of it. Nest Bridge for us is basically our bridge because we're building a global platform, as I mentioned, GSV, the global Silicon Valley, we actually engage with, we use governments today to build a bridge between the different markets and coming to Silicon Valley. And that way we give access to entrepreneurs from around the world over a very specific period of time, usually 3 to 4 months, and that's mostly because of our visa and immigration issues, to come to Silicon Valley for 3 purposes: to learn, to engage in business development, and in the third case is if they want to establish a presence here, a long-term presence in the Valley, and use Silicon Valley as a way to expand globally. NestHack, we've just changed the name of it. We actually, now it's called Nest Corp. It's our corporate platform. And you know, that's really where, you know, if I say, you know, is probably where we're putting a lot of resources in today is in our corporate engagements. And so we have a methodology from, you know, to how to engage large corporations with the startup community and becoming a scouting platform. We have this whole process that we call total innovation management. And we kind of developed that through my experiences at Xerox. You know, I'm a big believer of the principles of total quality management. And so we've kind of built a process that mirrors the principles of total quality management to help large corporations with their innovation strategy. And it's kind of a 6-month engagement process. And then NestU kind of goes all across all these activities, and that's our educational platform. And our educational platform really focuses on 3 broad areas. One is, you know, kind of leadership, business, and technology training, just individual workshops. Then we also have accelerator programs. And I'll go into accelerator programs in a minute as we kind of compare all these different types of entities. And then the third part is corporate innovation, right? And helping large corporations with not only internal scouting skunk projects, but also in their open innovation strategy and engaging with the startup and developer community outside of their corporate firewalls. Oh, it's going the wrong way now. Okay, this is kind of giving a description of that. Then the other components, the other platforms, is Nest Community. If I was to say probably the single most important value that the NestGSV provides to its residents, I say it's the power of our community. Because there's only so much we could do from a programming perspective. Yes, if I maybe had 100 employees, you know, I could come up with all kinds of programs all day long. But I only have 18 employees, and I have now close to 90 companies, or over 90 companies, you know, and we're going to be growing to about 200 companies. So what we want to do is make sure that our community also supports each other. So we do a lot of things in our business, in our community, to support that. You know, like today, I actually, you know, we have our own weekly event at NestGSV. It's our, you know, community meetings, luncheons that we have. And, you know, we usually have a keynote speaker, and we introduce new companies to the community that have joined our community. And right now, we're kind of going on a run rate of 10 new companies a month. So, you know, it's really important that the new community members engage as quick as possible and build relationships with the existing community member. And I don't know how many times on a daily basis when I'm walking down our hallway where a startup comes to me and goes, Kayvon, you talked about community, but I didn't realize how close knit of a community we have and how much value is brought to me. Because we're a little different, and we'll go into the differences in a minute, but one of the big differentiators between us and an accelerator, you know, like the 500 startups or the Y Combinators that you see, is our business model is not a funding vehicle. All those are. So we have kind of a little broader mission. We're about supporting and building ecosystems at a larger scale. And within our business model, we have accelerator programs. And I'll go into those differences in a minute. But the important thing is, what we're trying to do, it gives anyone who wants to become an entrepreneur that opportunity to become an entrepreneur and not limited to the investments that we make into the startups. Because investments can happen at different times. So we're kind of, I would say, you know, when I remember when I was trying to incorporate the company, you know, There is one of the things that drives NestGSV is kind of why we're doing NestGSV, and it may be kind of maybe utopic, but one of the things that drives us is we want to use technology to bring the world closer together, and so there's a social good that we're doing. So I kind of thought maybe we should be a B corporation, But the challenge with B corporations, maybe not today, but when I incorporated, I didn't know enough about it. So I said, why not? Then we became a C corporation, and I said, we'll just do our social good, and once we'll figure that out, we'll maybe decide whether or not we want to change our our legal entity. But we are, I'll make it very clear, we are a for-profit entity. But what I'm not trying to do, like maybe another technology company, is constantly drive my margins. Because for us, the upside is still the investments in the company. But what I'm trying to do is build a business model that is profitable, makes good money. But for me, I'm not going to worry about whether I charge $550 a desk or $575 and what that is. I just want to make sure I charge a rate that is good for the companies, where we make money, and everyone can kind of budget things accordingly, especially with the early stage startups. So community is really important. NestInvest is our investment platform. Today, and I'll go into our board structure and everything else, but there's really 3 ways that a company get funded in our platform. One is with my partners, my investors, GSV Capital, and also Red Eagle Ventures. So we're kind of a platform and a scouting platform for my 2 partners there. Third is what we do is we take corporate money, we put it in an account, and then when we kind of go through our Nest Corp platform, we actually take that money and invest in these startups. But this is really more, and it's a kind of a strategic relationship between us, the startup, and the large corporation. So it's kind of like a mini corporate fund that we put together. And then the third way startups get funded through us today is we do a lot of deal flow sessions for a lot of angel networks, venture capitalists, and corporate venture capitalists. And then events also. We have a quarterly event that we call Pitch It, where we kind of gamified and kind of done a pitching contest for startups to present, and we filter that, and we're having fun with that. So that's NestInvest. Nest Media, for us, is something that's becoming more and more strategic for us. We actually just finished building a video production studio at our facilities. And the reason why we did that is we want to be able to have a professional, high-quality way of communicating with our network, with our community. And also, as we go global, we want to make sure that that content is distributed in a professional manner. And so we actually have our own IPTV network. It's called Nest TV. And then what we've done also is created Nest Media, where we have the video production studio and a video production team. And it's really focusing on 4 areas. One is giving these startups an opportunity to professionally create a video of their company and their resources. The second is, as we're doing all these corporate initiatives in our education platform, we want to have both our physical education program and our online content. So we're basically providing educational content right now digitally and online, and gamifying it with some internal platforms and technologies that are developed at NestGSV. Oops. And then also our corporate and government initiatives. Give an example, we work with a number of corporations today that either have, that are actually giving non-dilutive cash money and prize money, or they have accelerator programs, and we want to make sure that the rest of the world has access to those initiatives and those resources. So, and we believe that video is actually the second most effective way of communicating, next to in-person communication. So, in our facility, we have a number of video conferencing platforms. We have 3 beam robots. So, you got robots walking around, and, there's, it's actually kind of a cool environment. Oops. Let's go. I'm sorry, guys. Went the wrong way. And then, of course, events are key to the business. So what we've also done is, I know if a lot of you have been to our facility, you notice that we have a lot of, so our facility is broken down into 3 areas. We call it community space, collaboration space, and workspace. 65% of our facility is community and collaboration space. Only 35% is desk space. And we think that's very important because we believe that true innovation and collaboration happens to be in group settings. And so we've tried to create a lot of areas where people can collaborate, sit down, have casual meetings, formal meetings, whatever it may be. And then really when they go to their desk is going to execute on those things that they've discussed and collaborated on. So, and that also helps in building our community factor. So events, the reason I'm getting into that, is we actually have 3 event spaces in our facility. One is our large conference center that holds up to 500 people. Then we have our, what I call our meetup room, which is basically is used for our own internal community meetings and also smaller entrepreneurial organizations, and then our education room. And we actually open up our facility to the outside community. So the only thing, so as long as you have something on innovation and entrepreneurship or technology, you know, we can work together to use our facilities. We don't do bar mitzvahs, we don't do birthday parties, we do World Cup parties, but so anyway, so events are also a good way to kind of bring the whole community together. And the last 2 things we're going to talk about, and then we're going to go into the differences between the different platforms, is, you know, we kind of, you know, are from day one, you know, we're investing in a lot of technology. So our Nest TV, you know, Insightly is our CRM, Cobot is basically our community management software, and Dropbox is to kind of show you that in same page, or just some other technologies that everyone uses to basically build, you know, this global platform that we're trying to build. One thing that we did from day one, so one of the best decisions I made, and probably the riskiest decisions I made, was leaving Plug and Play. And it's very tough to leave an organization that's showing a lot of traction, you're making good money, but it's not feeling right. And if it wasn't for my wife, I'd probably still be at Plug and Play. But the fact was that I had, you know, as the CEO of Plug and Play, I was responsible for everything except the real estate. So I truly had to come up with a business model, and it was trial by error, believe it or not. But, you know, developing the corporate platform, the government platforms, the educational stuff, the events and everything, it was really trial by fire. But I saw that there was a model there. And I also realized that by providing all those services, we were the natural contributor to the real estate part of the business. So for us, you know, when it was time for me to leave, was when I kind of saw, when we kind of hit that point of equilibrium, where the value added part of the business was kind of cutting into the margins of the real estate. And for me, I was convinced that the real estate part of the business is finite. I can only cram so many people into a facility, and I can only charge so much. But the other part of the business, especially when you kind of think about how to do this online, quite frankly, is infiniteless, and there's other ways. So what I did was, you know, when I did decide to leave, was kind of when I saw, you know, and I was a loyal soldier, but, you know, I'd had these discussions with Saeed, who's the CEO and the founder, and, you know, it kind of got to a point where, you know, I said, Saeed, we got to do this and we got to do that, and he would say, well, you know, let's just kind of just make it more profitable. Let's just bring in more sponsors. Let's, you know, do these type of things. And, you know, and I was kind of like, okay, let's create this online platform. You know, we're kind of going like this, right? And that's when I kind of realized that I either have to be a good soldier or, you know, step up to the plate and do what I thought was the right thing to do. So with the encouragement and support of my wife, I said, you want to do this? And she said, yes, and we built NestGSV. So from day one, what we did, which was very important, you know, we created 2 legal entities, funded 2 entities, and staffed 2 entities. One entity was NestGSV Global, or kind of our holding entity. The other one was NestGSV Silicon Valley. And the reason why we did this is because of our vision. Our vision is to create a globally connected network of innovation centers and to develop a global standard and to identify the best companies by sector without prejudice to geography. So in order to do that, I said, okay, some of our resources have to be in our Nest Global platform, and some of our resources have to be in our NestGSV, where's Silicon Valley? It's not even on here. But our NestGSV Silicon Valley entity. So what we did was, all facility-related matters, and some of the investments and some of the service providers and events all go under the NestGSV Silicon Valley entity. And then our corporate initiatives, our government initiatives, our advising of the startups all goes under our Nest Global platform. And then that way, when we open up different centers around the world, my global team is not only incentivized, but is responsible for distributing and working at the global scale. And then what we will do is we'll have, some members from our global team on the local centers and so forth. But that's kind of how we see the world, and that's how we structured it in order to achieve this goal. Just to kind of share with you, I'm a crazy guy, and so I had to find crazy people to share this crazy dream. And if it wasn't for these people, NestGSV would not exist. So I'm very fortunate to have some really sharp, successful individuals to be part of this thing. And obviously Mike Lameau, he's the founder and CEO of GSV Capital. David Potrick was the former president of Charles Schwab. Carmen Policy, it's Carmen Policy. And we actually added a few more people on our board who are the founders of Sonic Wall and so forth. And really it's because of these guys that, I wanted a board that really I can learn from, and where, who could also help us achieve this goal. So that's about NestGSV. Let me first of all, any questions at all? There's no questions. I'm kind of shocked. And I'm doing a lot of talking. So let me kind of go into the different platforms. A lot of people use that term incubator and accelerator. And sometimes they use those terms interchangeably without really understanding what one means. And to be honest with you, the definitions have actually changed, and that's why there's a lot of confusion. When we started Plug and Play, what we call accelerators today were actually incubators. And accelerator was something that we did, and the term accelerator came about. So, but today, I can tell you at least how we define what an incubator and what an accelerator is and what an Ecobator is. I kind of shared with you in a very long and detailed way what an Ecobator is, right? An Ecobator is kind of, more of a holistic ecosystem play, right? That really engages all the different entities in the innovation economy, and those entities are, obviously startups are, in terms of volume, the largest number of entities we support, but it's startups, large corporations, governments, universities, service providers, investors, and R&D centers. Those are kind of all the players in the Ecobator business model. I would say Plug and Play is a little bit of an Ecobator play, and maybe an organization called Rocket Space is trying to get into it, even though they're not defining it that way, because they're kind of dabbling in all the things. But by the way, the word Ecobator does not exist. I invented it because, and we're actually trademarking it because when we were trying to define who we are, there's really no word that defined what it was. So we knew that we're incubating entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystems, so we came up with the term Ecobator. Now, incubators today are really kind of what I would call a long-term platform that supports mostly internal innovation, right? So large corporations incubate a lot of their skunk projects, right? We probably, in our business model, incubate some of our companies in the long haul, right? So it's more about a kind of, I guess, I forget what kind of food you kind of cook slowly in a pot, a cooking pot, what? A crock pot, right? So, the crock pot incubation business is what an incubator is. Accelerators, is really the popular term that's really getting a lot of hype and a lot of attention, and those are the Y Combinators, the 500 startups, the tech stars, and right now there's a lot of vertical accelerators, out there. Like for instance, at NestGSV, we have a fashion tech accelerator, we have a corporate accelerator, we have an open accelerator, and I'll tell you about open accelerators in a minute. But typically what these accelerators are are actually an investment vehicle, right? Most accelerators are typically around 3-month programs. Some go as long as 6 months. And they kind of rotate, you know, they maybe do these programs twice a year usually on average. Some do it 3 times a year. But really what they are is an investment vehicle to take very early stage companies and basically put anywhere between, I've seen as little as $15,000, and now Y Combinator is putting $150,000, you know, which is kind of disrupting the model also again, into these companies from anywhere between 5 to 10% equity, right? And then what they do is they have a series of workshops and mentors who are typically non-paid mentors that kind of come and help these companies, you know, with everything from, you know, how to, you know, company formation to basically setting up a business model to financial planning to developing a you know, lean product, you know, strategy and all these things. There's like about 10 workshops, you know, and then what they do is they leverage, you know, a network of consultants that have kind of emerged out of the result of this, that kind of go to these different accelerators and kind of they become an expert in, you know, marketing or online marketing, or become an expert in pitching to investors or whatever it may be. And so this cottage industry has developed as a result of that. But typically an accelerator is a program that, as I said, is for investments. And it's a way, and then after that 3-month period, they may have a 30-day grace period, but they got to get out, right? And because they got to make room for the next batch. To give you an example, Y Combinator probably only has 7,000 square feet in Mountain View. You know, 500 Startups now is opening up different centers, but their main center in Mountain View is maybe 10,000 square feet. You know, and so it's really designed to support people for a short period of time, and so forth. But then once again, because of that importance of people need to be connected with each other, they see it's important to have that. Now, there's a number of online accelerators that are evolving, and so, you know, this market, I think, is due for some sort of innovation, even to the point where I've just created an open accelerator program, because I really don't, you know, it's just become, there's been no really innovation. So what we've done is we have access to the same network of mentors. So I've just opened it up, you know, without the investment vehicle, so that anyone who wants to learn can go through an accelerator program, you know, without the funding. And so it is just our approach towards it, because we just think that, you know, everyone calls it a demo day when they all graduate. And there's not even innovation in the names anymore, really. It's just kind of been replicated since the days that 500 Startup and Techstars and Y Combinator started it, and really no evolution, no innovation has been put into it. But to answer, you know, the question of which platform is good, right for which type of, you know, individual or team, I kind of sum it up, you know, in another way. Well, let me also, before I go into that, there's also another type of accelerator program that is basically what we call for pre-startup activity. And a good example of that is Founders Institute, right? So I don't know, have you all heard of Founders Institute? So what Founders Institute does is kind of a program where if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, they have a series of workshops that kind of mirror, you know, the programming of an accelerator, but it's to help that person or that team to basically, you know, formulate their ideas, and then they have a demo day at the end of the day, you know, for those companies who have kind of successfully graduated for the program. And what they do very well, which I love their business model, is what they've done is they leverage the community of entrepreneurs to actually support each other. So they break down the teams into, you know, groups of founders of 6. And not only do they do the once a week programming, but also the founders get together once a week and they support each other and push each other along to make sure that they, you know, basically, you know, do the things that they said they're going to do, so that they all kind of graduate at the same pace. Because if you don't do what you do, you get kicked out of the program. And that's where kind of I realized that they've done a great job of leveraging the power of their community and so forth. So that's, I guess, if you could think of the evolution, really is, you have the Founders Institute model, which is for those people that are thinking about joining a startup. And by the way, that is an application process. So you have to go, apply to the Founders Institute program. And by the way, they have branches all over the world now because it's a virtual program, right? So they leverage usually their partners. Like if they know about you guys, they'd love to have their meetings here and so forth. And then the next level up is now, okay, you already have this idea, and now you're really trying to get some funding for it. And so it's still very early stage, but typically at max you may have some friends and family money. And then you go into, these accelerator programs, like the 500 Startups or Techstar programs. And really, my recommendation would be this, is, whether or not that program is right for you or not, it really depends, I would say, mostly on your experience. I would say that a serial entrepreneur probably does not need to go through all the programming that an accelerated program has, because a lot of the stuff is just basic stuff. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur, I highly recommend going through an accelerator program. And also the real value of the accelerator program, it's not necessarily the programming, but it's their network of investors and corporate partners that support them. So, and that's really, yes. Okay, well, there's no entity like that today that I know of to say, this program is best for you or not, or I don't quite understand the question.
Well, there's a number of people you can go to help.
Right.
Everybody you get help from is going to view you as a possible business.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to figure people out to work with them.
Right.
And somebody who's new, the nuance to it, it's not going to understand that.
Absolutely.
They need some help.
Absolutely.
Where do they start?
Right.
Where do they go?
So,
ASL?
well, so, well, that's by the way, one of the reasons why I created an open accelerator program is so that people can learn, our open accelerator program, we don't ask for anything. It's free. People can go to it without any commitments and so forth. Now, but, good question, but I'll answer your question, but I also want to make another statement. Silicon Valley is the best place in the world to start a company for one reason only. Well, there's many reasons, but the main reason I think is because the mindset here is very much in favor of supporting the entrepreneur, right? We give the entrepreneur the benefit of the doubt. We always assume whatever you tell us, you're going to do, right? And it's up to you not to do the things you're going to do. And every place that I know around the world, including in the United States, New York and LA, it's tilted towards the investor, where they take more equity and they're less confident in the entrepreneur's ability to become successful. And the worst place in the world, I'm sorry if I insult anybody, anyone who hear Russian, is Russia. I've been to Moscow, and the way they treat the entrepreneur, and just in the way it is just horrific. They take a lot for very little, and they just abuse them. They think that power there is the money. And that's a huge mistake, because what drives innovation and entrepreneurship is that founder. If my board members took too much out of me, too much equity away from me, I would not be as motivated as I am today, because the only person who could really drive this company forward, besides my team, is me, because I'm passionate about it. You can't take away that passion from a founder. And the minute you take too much away from an entrepreneur, the founder, then he's feeling like, hey, I'm working for the man, and that incentive goes away, and it really kills it. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because what makes Silicon Valley so unique is the fact that, you could talk to maybe you could go, there's so many events going on here that, before you start, you can start doing your homework at so many places. There's so many events going on. All these organizations, have everything disclosed on their websites and everything else. So you can very easily come to some reasonable decisions, of what program is best for you. And because of the mindset here, you're not going to get screwed, so to speak, here in the Valley at least. But to answer your question, there really is no formal process, to kind of help make those decisions. It's going to be a trial and error, the way I see it today.
Okay, thank you.
I know that was very long-winded to answer, but any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned a term a couple times, skunk project. I just
Yeah.
want to verify what that is because I think I know, but I want to.
Sure. This is
And also, do corporations broadcast or otherwise advertise what their skunk projects are so entrepreneurs can find out what they are to fill need?
yeah, so I kind of use that skunk project word loosely. It's really internal innovation projects. So that's what skunk project is, as far as my definitions are concerned. But corporations do not broadcast their internal initiatives. They do broadcast their, what we call their open innovation initiatives. To give you an example, there are, Verizon today has $6 million of prize money that's giving away to companies that apply to the program by the end of June, that's focused on education technology, connected vehicle, sustainability, and the fourth one is, I think, big data. And they're giving $1 million to the top ideas in each sector, so $4 million right off the bat. And by the way, it's prize money, so it's non-dilutive. And then for second and third prize, you're giving $250,000 non-dilutive. And plus on top of that, they're paying us to basically help put these winning ideas through an accelerator program. So large corporate, and by the way, we're helping, promote these initiatives. So some initiatives, yes. Some initiatives, no. Internal, they typically do not. Yes.
How do you apply for that Verizon initiative? Is that through you or?
Well, you go to our website and you can see it's on our website, or just go Verizon, just put Verizon contest on the website and it'll take you right to the page on Google.
So Kayvon, you spoke at the Chinese event, remember, a couple weeks ago at the Hyatt Regency, and you talked about your global plan. Do you have a timeline in this? Is there a particular city you're focusing on right now
Yeah.
and moving from there, or simultaneously, or what?
Yeah, so good question. From day one, we, NestGSV is to build a global platform. That's why we spend all the money funding and incorporating two companies, going through all this headache. When I started this process from day one. And because I say, listen, I've been doing this for a long time, but what I've kind of realized right now is, I really have to really kind of have this business. And by the way, something that I've learned is, even though I've been doing this for a long time, the needs of the market have changed in the past couple of years. So I actually had to pivot, even though I thought I'm probably the most knowledgeable person in this space. Some of the things I thought were relevant were not as relevant. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, I'm slowing down a little bit. When I say slowing down, I'm talking about next year, we're going to have 5 centers. But I was thinking by now I would have at least 2 or 3 centers. But we kind of decided strategically to hold off for at least another 8 months, 9 months, because we want to make sure that we got our business model down to a T, and that it could scale in a better way, in an easier fashion. So our plan is to, and the other kind of thing that we did is, I just kind of went to the world and said, hey, this is what we're doing, who's interested? And I realized everyone's interested. So then we said, okay, instead of letting the tail wag the dog, let's kind of be more thoughtful in our expansion. So our next expansion, to answer your question, will be in New York. We're going to do an annex in San Francisco.
You are.
Yeah, just because there are a lot of resources out there, and there's some reason that, even though I still think, a lot of people say, oh, San Francisco is a new Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's not the case.
Yeah.
What's happened is Silicon Valley is just expanding, right? And that's what's going on. And then we're also looking into Canada. Brazil is a really hot market. China, Korea, Germany. So those are kind of in that order. We're going to be going out to these different markets. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this was informative for you guys.